It is 9:30. I will call the February meeting of the Wood County Board of Supervisors to order. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. At this time, I would ask Supervisor Lightman to come forward for our invocation and the body to rise and remain standing for our Pledge of Allegiance afterwards.
Brilliant White, good morning to you. Would you please join with me in a word of prayer? Lord, as we prepare to enter our monthly deliberations, make us ever mindful that our only purpose is to serve you and our fellow man. Constantly remind us that we are entrusted to be better stewards of our earthly blessings, that foremost of these blessings is the bounty and beauty of our earth and the fellowship of those we walk the earth with. Make us ever mindful that we have no more sacred trust to future generations than to pass on to them that which we have so carefully preserved. Brothers and sisters, in our endeavors today, may we crave not power, but service. This we pray in your name, amen. Join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Supervisor Lightman. January minutes. Do we have a second on the approval of those minutes? We have a motion and a second on the approval of the January minutes. Are there any additions, subtractions, or corrections to those minutes? See none, all in favor of that motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Thank you. Excusals today we have none. Resignations we have none. Appointments and reappointments we have to the Ethics Committee for a term ending 1/1/2022, Laura Clark. The Census Review and Redistricting Committee, Supervisors Curry, also appointed as the chair, Supervisor Fire, Supervisor LaFontaine, Supervisor Hahn, and Supervisor Zerflu. Without objection, I believe we can take those appointments by a voice vote. Is there a motion? Do we have a second to that motion? Is there a second? There we go.
Thanks, Mike.
We have a motion and a second to approve those. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Thank you. We move on. Public comments. Is there anyone here today that wishes to make public comment at this time? Public comment from anyone? See none, we will move on. We have no acknowledgements or recognitions today, and that will get us into the packet. On page 5, and those referrals have been passed on to the proper committees. I hope everyone saw the thank you card from Carl Hilke's wife Pam. That takes us to page 6. Pages 6 through 9 are minutes from the Executive Committee. Administrative Coordinator's Report on page 10. County Clerk, I'm sorry, Supervisor Clendenning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I received a lot of calls about what's coming up on the agenda in a resolution for the constitutional offices. And some of the questions was this, why did this come up on the executive committee? It was not on their agenda. And I said, yes, it was on their agenda. It was on their agenda in 2 places. And one of the places was the coordinator's report, in which he indicated that there was a meeting with several people. It was Human Resources, it was the vice chair of the county board, the chairperson of the county board, and also Peter Kastenholz. And some of those, it took place with people that are running for constitutional offices. And it indicates twice in the report of the Human Services that this meeting took place. And that's why it was felt that it was on the agenda and it could be brought up. And a motion was made to send this to the county board. And some of the phone calls was to me, would you vote in favor of tabling this? And I said, or tabling this and going back to the executive committee. It's already been to the executive committee. And I understand why some people wanted to go back to the executive committee, so it probably would come out of there with no vote at all. So those are the answer to the questions of the phone calls I got. Thank you.
Page 11, County Clerk's Report. Finance on pages 12 through 18. Human Resources 19 through 24. IT on 25 through 29. Facilities Manager on page 29. Our energy audit is on pages 30 through 79. Treasurer's Report on page 80. Corp Counsel 81 and 82. And that brings us to our first resolution on page 83, and I would ask the clerk to read that, please.
This will be Resolution 20-2-1, to set the compensation package for the County Clerk, Register of Deeds, and Treasurer for their next term of office beginning January 4th, 2021. Fiscal note, the 2021 base rate for these officials shall be set at $41.23 per hour for a total of 2,015 hours annually, equating to an annual salary of approximately $83,078.45 per year. In each subsequent year, these officials would be granted the same cost of living increase or decreased, COLA, that is awarded to the Wood County wage plan then in effect for non-elected department heads.
Do we have a motion? Motion by Bry, second by Fisher. We have a motion on the floor and seconded regarding the resolution. Any discussion on that motion? Supervisor Plemmel.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, and I'm going to digress here for a second. Yesterday was President's Day, and that used to be, for those of you who are old enough, kind of George Washington's birthday. About a month and a half ago, I happened to be out in Washington, D.C., and we spent the better part of a day out at the George Washington Leadership Institute, which, for those of you who haven't been to Mount Vernon, is a brand new $200 million facility. It's kind of interesting. While we were out there, in small groups, they took us into their archive room where you could actually stand next to, you couldn't touch, but those documents written by Washington, Jefferson, Hamilton. It was an incredible experience. But as part of that experience, which was taught by a retired admiral, retired president of Dartmouth, and the head of the history department at West Point, at the end of the day, you were put into an interactive situation. And in that interactive situation, you were George Washington. They had kind of film that surrounded you and some holographic images. And what this was based on was, George Washington kind of had to be Patton and Eisenhower and FDR all rolled into one without any precedent on those decisions he made. And the whole crux of this exercise was to see how he made those decisions and how this country was formed. And so he was basically, or you, were sitting in a room with no information and the problem at hand. And the problem was pretty difficult to solve usually. And then as time went on, different characters, people in history, walked into that room and provided information. You had to make a decision in timely fashion. If you waited too long, for instance, at a time as a general, your army probably would have been obliterated, you would have lost the war. At other times, you had to wait longer to make a decision, so you had enough information at hand. So the reason I preface that with this is we have a resolution before us today to set the compensation for those elected constitutional officers. And I know that this came out of the executive committee, and it came out on a 4-3 vote, but none of the information that you have since been provided was on hand at the time that they made that decision. Currently, our constitutional officers are at a wage higher than the 17 county comparables that we have used going back for at least 10 years. So we have constantly looked at those get adjusted, and our constitutional officers' wages have been adjusted upward from a wage in 2014 of about $69,000 up to a 2020 wage of $75,864 based on those increases that every county employee gets. So the reason I'm talking to you today is we have an exhaustive process where we go through this. We look at all of the information at hand. My argument here is that the executive committee at that meeting had none of that information at hand. A resolution was put forward, it was voted on and came out of committee, but I don't think any of that information was available. Every one of you has since gotten that information. It's been disseminated throughout the county. I would never recommend that we go with the highest wage in any county that is abuts ours or that is a comparable. Likewise, I would not go to the lowest wage in those comparables. So at this point, I will make a motion to refer this back to committee. I think that's where it needs to come out of with due consideration to be brought forward at the March meeting, which provides plenty of time to set those wages as we move forward. Thank you. And that is my motion, to refer to committee.
Is there a second to that motion? Okay, Mr. Holbrook, Supervisor Holbrook, is that a second? Okay.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and seconded to refer this resolution back to committee. Is there any discussion on that motion? Supervisor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I respectfully disagree with Supervisor Plemmel on a few things. I do agree that the information probably wasn't presented in or at the executive committee meeting, but to be clear, no information had been given to the executive committee up to that point until we read in the administrative coordinator's report and in a report from Human Resources that discussions were even being had. Now, that information has been presented to the board. The board has documentation that Human Resources sent out on behalf of the county board chair and the county board vice chair. You also should have been given information requested by Supervisor Clendenning that was sent out to all of us. We are the county board. We can make decisions. I feel strongly that today, whether we agree or disagree with this, we vote on it today. If it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass. But we need to do this today. I think sending it back to committee is, I don't see the point of it, honestly. I just do not see the point. A decision needs to be made. It has to be made before April 15th, and I will be voting no against this amendment.
Supervisor Clendenning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was no information given out to the committee that I said that met, which was the Human Resources Director, Corporation Counsel, Vice Chair, and Chairman, and met with these people. And the JDQ is involved in this. They were even told that they should not fill out a JDQ because in 2012, there was a resolution by this county board, to say that Carlton Detman will do the review of this and set a wage. In 2014, we give the county board chairman raise his salary to $20,000, just like it was for, I know this is not a constitutional office, just like it was for Portage County. And also, we give a raise to the sheriff, who was up for elections and needed to act on this, although now remember, Carl Detman was supposed to do this. But then we had also for the clerk of courts, and it passed to a higher salary to get them up to where other people were. This committee that met never took that stuff into consideration. They just told the people, don't do a JDQ, you don't need it, because we're taking you out of this JDQ thing, and the decision will be made by the county board on your wages. And here it is to you today to make this decision. Just pulling it off is just a kicking the can down the road, in my opinion. The fact is that when these people at the next county board meeting, these three constitutional officers will be at a conference in Madison about the upcoming election and things like that. It's a seminar down there for them. And that's why I think they want to just move this. And another thing, I think They want to move this to the executive committee because one of the 4 people that voted for this he voted for this to go to the county board, but that person has changed their mind about the money. So now the vote would be 3 to 4 the other way. And this is just kicking the can down the road, people. Please do not vote for it. Let this county board do their work and vote on this. If you're not in favor of it, vote no, and that's the end of it. Thank you.
Supervisor Plummer.
I wasn't one of the supervisors that called Mr. Clendenning, just to make it clear. Again, I just want to go back to the fact that you're right, we could vote on something today, but that doesn't make it right. The JDQs were done so we could systematically, with a lot of thought, line these wages up with those qualifications and those duties of other employees within this county. If I, for no reason, if I go $10,000 above the comparable counties, the 17 counties that we use constantly for wages, I'm setting us up for probably in the neighborhood of a $1.5 to $2 million kick in wages and salaries as my other employees come forward and say, hold it. My wages, my duties are comparable. I also need a $10,000 raise based on nothing other than I feel like it. So I'm going to go back to the fact, and I'm adamant that we get this back to committee, because the committee did not have, as a whole, this information in hand when that decision was made. They did not see those 17 county comparables. You've all gotten them. We're already 3% higher than the other comparables. Now, I'm not saying we should roll that back, and I'm not saying we should freeze. I'm just saying, with the information available, that committee should bring forth a reasonable resolution to this county that doesn't put us in peril with every other employee out there and set us up for long-term failure. I think the executive committee is the appropriate place for it to come out of. This can then be amended and or debated at the following meeting, which gives us plenty of time to publish those wages. So I stand with my first comments, and I think that it's imperative that this go back to the executive committee. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Supervisor Holbrook.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is that working?
You're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will vote in favor of this amendment to send it back, simply because there's no way in the world I can, in all good conscience, vote for this kind of a salary increase for the people, or for the officers that are mentioned. We have people in this community that have job requirements of at least an undergraduate degree and 4-year college education, who, if I propose that they be paid $50,000 a year, the school board would all get thrown out of office. You know, I think $75,000 for an average salary for these positions is just fine, and they do get the COLA. So whether this goes back to committee or it goes for a straight up vote today, I will not vote in favor of this. Thank you.
Vice Chair Holbrook.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I also don't see the benefit of this going back to committee. The committee as a whole may not have had all the information at the time that the resolution was passed out of committee onto county board, but we've got the information now. You know, we've all seen the document that our human resources very aptly put out, and I think we have the information now to move forward on this. So I just don't see a benefit of tabling it for another month. I think let's get it voted on, and we know exactly where we stand, and I think that debate will be very interesting on the original resolution. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just as a point of order, and to Supervisor Rosar's comment, it's not tabling it, Donna. It's just...
We're just sending it back.
Okay, just wanted to be clear.
Any other discussion on the motion? Does everyone understand the motion you're voting on is to refer this resolution back to committee? If there is no further discussion, I would ask you to please vote.
for the love of it.
Told it I might tell.
And that motion fails, so we will go back to the original motion, which is to adopt the resolution. We have a motion on the floor and seconded to adopt that resolution. Is there any discussion on that motion? Any discussion?
Lance can go first.
Supervisor Plimo.
Thanks again, Mr. Chairman. Well, then, if we're going to move forward, then I'm going to move to amend this back to the current wage where all of those, and this is what I didn't want to do because I thought that due consideration should have occurred outside of just this room, but I'm going to move to amend this to the current wage that those constitutional officers are at, that 2020 wage that has been set, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, $75,864. And in no way does this red circle those wages, and in no way does this eliminate them from receiving the COLAs as we go forward. And I want to make it clear that if we find that this wage is not adequate, this board cannot cut wages, but this board can increase wages if it's done in a systematic fashion. In other words, I cannot just increase the clerk's wages. It has to be tied to something, but that can be done. So my motion or my amendment is to move this forward at the $75,864 level.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and seconded to amend the original resolution to reflect, and I'm paraphrasing if I'm wrong, Supervisor Plimo, please correct me, to keep the wages static where they are going forward. COLAs, did you mention COLAs or not?
Yes, he did.
Eligible for COLAs. Okay, so they would be eligible for COLAs and keeping the wages where they are going forward. That would be the amended resolution. Is there any discussion on that motion? Any discussion on the amendment of that? Vice Chair Roser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I will support that, and I'm going to tell you why. I did some research on this, and I went to an economic profile that showed that the Wood County median household income was $57,150. And so that's a household income, so that's probably with 2 wage earners. And so I also looked at the benchmark, and I would have a hard time explaining to the taxpayers why I was willing to give a 9.5% increase to constitutional offices. It also is a 15 to 18% increase above the benchmark that Supervisor Plimo has talked about. I'd also like you to look at the benefits package. You know, when you look at those benefits, I just want to, because I'm not sure that the taxpayer understands a lot of these things. Wood County pays 90% of a Wood County employee's health insurance. That includes health, vision and dental in some, and workers' compensation. And that is great, okay? There are a lot of people that live in our county that have no health insurance. Either because they're at that in-between stage where they don't qualify for, subsidized, and they can't afford to buy health insurance. So when you look at that, what is it, $29,852? No, that would be at the higher wage. So with the current salary, benefits are about 24% of the current salary package for those constitutional offices. The other thing is the retirement fund. We have a wonderful retirement fund, the Wisconsin Retirement Fund. Wood County pays 6.75%, and the employee pays 6.75%. A lot of people in Wood County don't have a lucrative retirement fund, and the WRS provides that for our county employees. I know that there was some question about the clerk of courts, and that was a position that was actually given a different grade because of the workload that that position has versus these constitutional offices. So I'm just telling you that in my opinion, the numbers don't support any increase in these positions. I've never tried to look at personalities when I've talked about this. I've always tried to look at positions, but I totally agree that leaving this salary with the individuals eligible for future COLAs. And Lance is absolutely, I'm sorry, Supervisor Plummer, you're absolutely right, that we can raise these salaries in their term if the comparables and the benchmarks change. And so I just can't explain to the taxpayers, and the taxpayers of this county need to know that if this increase goes through, that there's a 9.5% increase, and it's a 15 to 18% above market. And I think a lot of people would like that kind of a raise. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have one comment, and then I'd like to ask a question. My comment is, and by now everyone knows my position, so I'm not going to pontificate on what I believe to be right here. But my only comment is, I understand the COLA, and I understand that that does give them an increase. But I think we also need to keep in mind that on any given year, if we have employees pay more into their insurance, that can actually neutral out or even be a decrease for the employee. So I'd like to throw that out there so that we keep in mind that a COLA doesn't necessarily mean there's always going to be an increase every year. I think that could be a misconception if not communicated correctly. And then if, without any objection, Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask Corporation Counsel if it's accurate that the raise, that the wage can be increased in future years. Thank you.
Without objection, Corp Counsel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think you folks have this statute right above the resolution that's in your packet, and it's on the prior page. And so it says, it's citing on the second page of that memo, Wisconsin Statute 59.22, sub 1, sub A1, and 2/3 way down the paragraph. It states, the compensation established shall not be increased nor diminished during the officer's term and shall remain the same for ensuing terms unless then changed by the board. So there have been changes in the law with regards to this over the years, where there have been conflicting laws and changes in language, but at this point in time, although you can apply a COLA, which was part of the motion made, which is an increase during the term, you can't just come back in 2 years and increase it by 5,000 or decrease it by 2,000. So I want to be clear, I think that was the question that was asked.
Yes, it was. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Supervisor Clendenny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, the thing here is your employees. And the employees in Wood County, I don't care what they are in 17 other counties, next door neighbors or anything like that. It's employees. And yes, we have a beautiful package for our employees, and one of them being the Wisconsin retirement plan. It's just great. And that was done over the years. Now we have no unions. And I'm a union man. And I think that this county has to be good to their employees. And their employees also consist of the constitutional officers here. And what is so surprising about this meeting that was done, that you talked to these people and they didn't agree with you. And you really had nothing other than to keep the wages right where they are. I think that's terrible. That's no consideration whatsoever of the employees of the county. I'm voting against the amendment.
Is there any other discussion on the Supervisor Ashcraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had called on this myself, but it's the benefits what makes an issue for me. On the farm right today, for a family of couples that have health insurance, it's $1,500 a month. That's $18,000 a year has to come off of this farm. You have to pay all their Social Security, you have no retirement, and then you wonder why these farms have to get bigger in order to keep people to have these benefits, but we're giving these people in town here. That's why it hurts me so much when they come down to these farmers with these big herds, because they have to have this extra income to pay for these benefits. We don't get anything from the county or the state. It all has to come out of the milk check. Thank you, Mr.
Any further discussion on the motion to amend? Seeing none, I would have the clerk reiterate that amendment so that everyone understands it completely.
Motion by Plimmel, seconded by Rozar, to amend to the resolution to the current 2020 wage, but remain eligible for COLA increases to any wage plan.
Does everyone understand that amendment? With no further discussion, please vote on the amendment. And that motion fails, so we go back once more to the original motion, which is, we have a motion and second. Motion on the floor and seconded. On the original, we go back to the original resolution. Any discussion on that motion? Supervisor Plimmel.
Get my exercise today. My original motion to refer this back was because I wasn't sure the current wage was where it should be. But I knew it shouldn't be at 80+ thousand a year, regardless of what you heard, you know, in regard to basing things on comparables, because that's what we do with everything. There's no way, with the fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers of this county, that I've already gone in 2014 from $68,900 to 2020 wages $75,864, and to include those COLAs, and to go to that number and set this county up as we move forward in the wage study for financial disaster going forward. So I'm certainly going to, it would have been my last resort, but I'm certainly going to vote against this resolution, which puts us right back where we start. Maybe that's kind of where I started in the first place. And it's still going to end up having to come out of the executive committee because we do have to set these wages prior to the next election. So on this particular one, again, I'm going to vote no because there's no way with clear conscience I can do this from a fiscally responsible position in the county. Thank you.
Any others? Supervisor Clendenning.
So I say, show me in this resolution where this goes back to the executive committee to do this. I think if this passes here, that is it.
It is.
I thought I just heard Supervisor Plimmel say it goes back to the executive committee.
I said it has. May I, Mr. Chair? Just clarify. I said if it fails, the wage still has to be set. If it passes, it passes.
Sorry.
If it fails, it needs to go back there to have those wages set. Or that's at least historically where it has gone back to. I pulled resolutions from as far back as I could, and every resolution setting wages for our constitutional officers have either come from the previous HR committee or from the executive committee. So my assumption would be it goes back there for further consideration, kind of get you back to where I started, I guess. But again, that's just an explanation.
So I obviously will be voting against this resolution. I'd just like to reiterate. Several years ago when I was doing doors for my county board race, one of my constituents said to me, and of course this was before the motion went before this board about increasing county board salaries, and he looked at me and he said, if you vote to increase your salaries, I will never vote for you again. For what were we making, $175 at that time? I don't know what. And I did not vote for that because I felt like a constituent had said to me, you know, you serve this county as a public servant, you have a servant's heart, and so I took that as an opinion. If you can explain to the taxpayers of this county why they are voting for a 9.5% increase with a generous benefit package, then I asked you to vote yes on this resolution. If you can explain to the taxpayers why their taxes are going to have to go up to give people a salary 15 to 18% above market value, then you vote yes. And I hope your phone rings off the hook of fiscally conservative people in this county saying, what are you doing? These are my taxes that support these offices. And I repeat again, the internal and the external equity of raising these salaries are not supported by the numbers that you have on this. So if you can justify to the taxpayers of this county, why are you doing this, then you go right ahead and vote yes for this resolution, and I wish you every future success.
Supervisor Clendenny.
And I am voting yes. And I'm going to tell you, I have voted yes for employee benefits all my life. Working here, working in the paper mill. And I did. And I've been through a lot of elections, and it has come up. But I have won every election, and I explained to the people, these are people in Wood County. These are your employees in Wood County that hired. So I am voting yes.
Any further discussion on the motion? Any further discussion? I'm sorry. Vice Chair Rosen.
My adrenaline's running. So we have all kinds of employees that do a good job in this county, okay? I can tell you, if this kind of a raise is done, why are we not compensating all those other employees at this same kind of a rate? Because our employees are good employees. They serve this county admirably, cost-effectively, efficiently. I think it's setting us up for a real dilemma with internal equity, and I may not be here to participate in that discussion, but I think it's going to be an interesting discussion if this resolution passes.
Any further discussion on the resolution? Does everyone understand the resolution of what we are voting now? See none, please vote. And that resolution fails, 10-9. Thank you. We will move on. Page 84. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, let me ask, I want to go on again, just make the comment that this gives the executive committee the opportunity to look at this. And I'm not saying anything should be frozen, I'm just saying it needs to be looked at. But my question is this, and I guess I'd state it publicly. I know our constitutional officers have a conference scheduled the same day that you have the executive committee meeting, and I think it's imperative that they attend that meeting. So I would implore the executive committee to change that meeting date to accommodate those people's attendance at that meeting. I think it's important they attend those meetings. It's part of their association. So if you, Mr. Chair, and the rest of the executive committee could change the date of that meeting, would be greatly appreciated, I'm sure, by most of the members of this board and certainly by those constitutional officers. Thank you.
We move on to page 83 in our next, page 84 in our next resolution, and I would ask the clerk to read that, please.
This will be Resolution 20-2-2 to create .97 FTE Children's Support and Service Coordinator position. Fiscal note, anticipated wages and benefits based upon a grade 8 step 1, total $71,960.58.
We have a motion on the floor and seconded regarding that resolution. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Could I just make a statement?
Vice Chair Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to point you to the last whereas in this resolution, where it says the increased cost associated with this position will be fully covered by additional revenue and will not require county tax levy. So even though we're creating another position, there is additional revenue, and our waiting list will be eliminated for vulnerable individuals that really need these services. So would appreciate your support of this resolution. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, please vote. And that motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Our next three resolutions are all budget amendments, and I believe we can take them together without objection. And I would ask the clerk to read those, please.
This will be Resolution 20-2-3 to amend the 2020 Veterans Department WDVA grants budget for additional revenue and expenditures unanticipated during the original budget process. Fiscal note, no cost to Wood County. The adjustment to the budget totals $1,500. Resolution 20-2-4, to amend the 2020 budget to include monies that were budgeted in 2019 for microwave replacements but were not used during that budget cycle. Fiscal note, no additional cost to Wood County. The monies were budgeted and moved to the fund balance at the end of 2019. The monies will be expended in 2020. The adjustment to the budget totals $120,105. Resolution 20-2-5, to amend the Land and Water Conservation Department budget for the purpose of carrying over funds for the county-wide nitrate sampling effort of private wells. Fiscal note, to transfer $4,111 from the 2019 Land and Water Conservation Department budget to the 2020 Land and Water Conservation budget.
We have a motion on the floor and seconded regarding those three resolutions. Is there any discussion concerning any of those resolutions? Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. And that motion passes unanimously. Thank you. That takes us to page 88 and 89, where we have Health and Human Services Committee minutes. Veteran Service Commission on 90 and 91. Health Department, pages 92 through 96. Human Services, 97 through 104. Veterans on page 105. Public Safety Committee, 106 through 110. Central Records, 111 and 112. Coroner, pages 113 through 117. Humane Officer, 118 through 121. Sheriff's Rescue, 122 through 127. The end of the year report from Sheriff's Rescue on 128 through 138. Sheriff's Department, pages 139 through 159. And that takes us to our sixth resolution on page 160, and I would ask the clerk to read that, please.
This will be Resolution 20-2-6, to recommend the Department of Transportation lower the speed limit on State Highway 54 in the area of the intersection of 80th Street, Town of Grand Rapids, Wood County. Fiscal note, none.
We have a motion on the floor and seconded regarding the resolution. Is there any discussion on that motion? Supervisor Holbrook.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a little confused by this resolution because, I travel that corridor quite frequently. And, while I don't disagree that the speed limit should be dropped from 80th Street on, I think it seems to me to fall short of where that change of speed should occur. Because, when you take when you go past 80th Street and you're trying to turn around, you end up going right into two lanes of high-speed traffic that are still traveling 65 miles an hour. It would seem to me that the change of speed should occur prior to probably 84th instead of 80th. So I'm kind of confused, and I would appreciate an explanation of why it's 80th as opposed to 84th. Thank you.
Supervisor Clendetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one thing, did anybody in the committee vote no? Because the minutes for this meeting on here is not there. And I'm wondering if anybody voted no, or was it unanimous? That's one question.
Supervisor Zerfeld.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Supervisor Clendetti, no, it was a unanimous vote.
Okay, thank you.
And then to answer if I'm sorry.
No, okay, a question. We also had a similar resolution in the town of Grand Rapids because that consists of the town of Grand Rapids, the village of Plover, that's where the Wood County Buren Park is. Oh no, I'm sorry, it's not Wood County Park, it's just Buren Park. But anyway, that's where that is. And the town of Grand Rapids has been after lowering that speed limit there. And one of the reasons is because the the farm, the strawberry farm there, is also a school farm, or was at one time. And we went to lower it. We went to lower it also because this is the same condition that was on Highway 29, in which they had 80th Street and Highway 54. And there was a lot of accidents on it, and even deaths. So the town of Grand Rapids has been speaking about this a lot, because that whole corner there, of course on the west side, is just the town of Grand Rapids, and then it's in Portage County. And they've always told us that that road was built for speed. You go about a mile in west, and yes, the speed limit goes down to 50 miles an hour. But to let you know that the town of Grand Rapids unanimously just did have a petition, a resolution on this, and we voted the same way, and I'm certainly voting for this. I think that speed limit should be lowered.
Supervisor Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may quickly answer Supervisor Holbrook's question. 84th Street's in Portage County. That's why it was included in this resolution. And then, without objection, I would really like to call Captain Ellis up here because of the Sheriff's Department, because this issue is very important. It really can send a message to Madison on safety, and we've had a lot of problems out there. It takes into effect Grand Rapids also, but I think there's some things that we might understand about this if I could call him up here without objection.
Without objection from the board, Captain Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you Supervisor Zerflu and County Board Supervisors for giving me the opportunity to speak. With regard to the resolution, this has been an ongoing problem, as Supervisor Clendenning has stated, for years. And multiple efforts have been made to get the state to reduce the speed limit in this area by asking. Studies have been done previously, and after a recent traffic fatality with a motorcycle of sorts leaving Donahue Supersports being rear-ended by a vehicle at a high rate of speed, unfortunately the safety concern reared its head again. We started addressing this issue at the Traffic Safety Committee meetings with members of DOT and various other department heads involved, and this was the direction we were asked to go by the state itself. As a county, we do not govern the speed on a highway of that nature. It's set up by statute that only the state of Wisconsin can reduce the speed limit in that area, but our intent is to not just ask, but to show that the supervisors of Wood County believe this is a safety issue, and imploring the state to do another speed study so that this may be reduced. Should this resolution not pass, the state won't hear our voice, and there will be no chance of it being reduced. The reason Supervisor Holbrook, we didn't include 84th Street was we chose to stay within our jurisdiction of Wood County. Sheriff Becker has been very passionate about this cause. He's reached out to Sheriff Lucas of Portage County, and I believe they are in favor of reducing it in that area as well. A little additional information, I know in McCain's, the area of McCain's on 54 in Portage County, they have implemented traffic lights, warning lights during their shift changes to try and slow traffic in that area as well. The state will say the road is built for speed, as Supervisor Clendenning said, based on its width in that area, and I don't anticipate it'll be an easy battle, if you will, to get them to reduce the speed. But should the county board not pass this resolution, they won't hear the voice of Wood County saying we need a lower speed limit in that area for our constituents.
Thank you, Captain Ellis. Vice Chair Roder.
I probably shouldn't be the one standing up talking about speed. Thank you. So the unfortunate thing is that when the speed limit's 65, people are going 70, 71. Even if the speed limit goes down to 50, they'll probably be doing between 55 and 58. I guess for the sheriff, for the captain back there, I was going to ask him, so the people that can issue citations along this road are, I assume, the state police, the sheriff's department, and the Grand Rapids police. All three of those jurisdictions can issue citations for speeding on that road?
That's correct.
I don't travel that road very often.
And to add to your point, we'd still be accomplishing our goal, because if the speed limit is 65 there, I know on personal trips, I've been coming in at or around 65 miles per hour, and had vehicles blowing my doors off as they go by heading into our county. That being said, if people are going to speed, at least we have the option of bringing that speed down. If it's 65, they're probably going to go 73 to 75, but if it's at 50 there, our hopes is we can get them to 60. My experience in traffic enforcement, traffic crash reconstruction, and overall law enforcement experience shows that any time we can reduce the speeds, you'll reduce severity of crash and increase people's chance of survivability or being safe. That's our intent here, to pass a resolution to ask the state to open a study and tell them Wood County wants it lowered.
Supervisor Creed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This part of 54, part of Buren runs through that area. If you're familiar with the area, the Buren Business Park has been pointed out, not a county park. That you have to go. I'll tell you the rest of the story later on about that. But so there's not only the problems that exist now with the businesses that are out there and the traffic flow, but the business park certainly, hopefully, is going to have more tenants, so more traffic that's going to be in that area. I didn't appear before the Buren Village Board, but I talked to several of the board members, and this is getting inside baseball. When the park was initially requested from the state didn't want access onto 54. They wanted onto County Trunk U into 90th Street. And there was, at that time, there was talk about an overpass, and that's what instigated the J-turns, which I think is one of the only in the world.
Highway 29 has one.
But several board members I talked to said that they had requested a long time ago that the speed limit be reduced there. So there is sentiment in the area to reduce this speed. Thank you.
Supervisor Clendenning.
I would just like to say that hopefully this will pass unanimously. But what it does, I would like the Sheriff's Department and the Safety Department to let the residents of town of Grand Rapids, because there was 9 driveways go out in that road. And whenever you see a reduced speed limit, it's on the driveways and how far apart they are that the state does. But I would like to encourage the safety committee to tell our residents how they can get involved in this, writing the governor, writing whoever they want. I'm sure they would do that, and I would be glad to circulate that in the town of Grand Rapids. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, please vote. And that motion does pass unanimously. Thank you. That takes us to page 161, where we have seed minutes on pages 161 through 165. ITBEC on North Central ITBEC Board and Tourism and Economic Development Advisory Committee joint meeting on pages 166 through 169. Land and Water Conservation 170 through 173. Citizens Groundwater 174 through 177. Planning and Zoning 178 through 183. Extension 184 through 188. North Central Wisconsin Workforce Development Board, pages 189 through 200. And that takes us to our seventh resolution on page 201, and I would ask the clerk to read that, please.
This will be Resolution 20-2-7 to authorize Wood County Director of Planning and Zoning, Jason Grunberg, to apply for the Wisconsin Department of Transportation 2020 to 2024 Transportation Alternatives Program grant to update the Wood County Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. Fiscal note, total project cost is $80,000. This is an 80-20 local match grant where WIS.TAP funds will total $64,000 and the 20% match of $16,000 will be covered by the North Central Regional Planning Commission Local Planning Funds Reserve account. Wood County will incur approximately $500 of WIS.TAP charges in processing this application if the grant funding is awarded.
We have a motion on the floor and seconded regarding the resolution. Is there any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Supervisor Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The seat committee supports this resolution. It's been better than 5 years since our bicycle plan has been updated. I think this is important for the county to, if we're talking about economic development, this certainly might entice younger people to look at this area as more attractive. The reason I rise is I want to point out in the fiscal notes, it was red, but when we joined the North Central Regional Planning Commission, there was some hesitation on some supervisors about the amount of money that was going to be spent. It's around $30,000 a year to join this organization. Although I don't expect dollar for dollar return or more money, but there is a return already in the fiscal year of, if the grant goes through, of $16,000 for joining that organization. Thank you.
Along those lines, Supervisor Curry, as well, I've talked with Dennis Lawrence, and I think Jason and I talked about it too, as we developed a bike plan for Wood County, and we look at what the proposed development is for Powers Bluff, and I talked to Director Lawrence, and there may be opportunities for us to gain some other grant monies through that organization as we incorporate Powers Bluff into the complete bike plan for the county. So is there any other discussion regarding the motion? See none, please vote. And that motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Pages 202 through 206, we have meeting minutes from judicial and legislative. Criminal Justice Coordinator Ad Hoc, pages 207 and 208. We have claims on pages 209 through 212. Child Support, 213. Court Counsel, 214. Register of Deeds, 215. And that brings us to our 8th resolution on page 216, and I would ask the clerk to read that, please.
This will be Resolution 20-2-8, to set the compensation package for the Register of Deeds for the next term of office beginning January 4th, 2021. Fiscal note, the 2021 base rate shall be set at $41.23 per hour for a total of 2,015 hours annually, equating to an annual salary of approximately $83,078.45 per year. In each subsequent year, this official would be granted the same cost of living increase or decrease, COLA, as that is awarded to Wood County wage plan, then in effect for non-elected department heads.
We have a motion on the floor and seconded regarding the resolution. Is there any discussion on that motion? Supervisor Pluml.
Mr. Chairman, I think we've talked about this at length already today, but never in the past have we had wages come out of an individual committee with oversight in regard to, at least not in the last 20 years, in regard to oversight of, in regard to wages of people they have oversight of. And since we've addressed this on a whole with the executive committee and looking to set these wages at the same time, I would move that we postpone this indefinitely, which for all practical purposes kills this and puts this back to the executive committee to look at all three of these as a package. So my motion is to postpone indefinitely.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion on the floor and seconded to postpone this resolution indefinitely. I I believe that is not debatable. Peter, am I correct in that?
Are you asking if it's debatable? Yes.
It is debatable?
Correct.
It is debatable, okay. We have a motion on the floor and seconded to postpone indefinitely. Any discussion on that motion? Supervisor Clendenny.
I would say let it go, let's see how that goes. And to say that this has never been done, when we raised the clerk of courts, it came right through the Judicial Legislative Committee. I was chairman of it, and it came through there, and we did raise it. With the Safety Department raised the sheriff's $50,000. So to say that it's never been done in 20 years, I don't think is a proven fact. So, thank you.
Supervisor Zerflu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did vote for that resolution when we had all three of the elected officials in it. I think this is changing the rules midway through, and I'll be voting no on this. We have to treat them all the same. Thank you.
Supervisor Clemmel.
At least on this motion, as a point of order, you're voting to postpone indefinitely, which if you want to stop it, that's a yes vote, not a no
Mr.
vote.
Chairman, if I can, I'm just going to give this mic to him. He knows what I mean.
What he said.
Any further discussion on the motion to postpone indefinitely? Any further discussion? Please vote. And that motion passes. The resolution is postponed indefinitely. That takes us to page 217 on our 9th resolution, and I would ask the clerk to read that, please.
This will be Resolution 20-2-9, to establish the position of second vice chairperson of the Wood County Board of Supervisors. Fiscal note, none.
We have a motion on the floor and seconded concerning the resolution. Is there any discussion on that resolution? Supervisor Clendenny.
I am voting yes on this. It was in the past three like that. It was the chair, the vice chair, and the second vice chair. And I think it went along. In my opinion, and I would believe in the committee's opinion, because we did vote to bring this on a vote of 4-1. And I would appreciate anybody that would get up and say they don't want this and why they don't want this. The thing of it is that second vice chair can be, in many other counties, is what it is that person is the chairman of any ad hoc committee from a committee that forms an ad hoc committee, and that person, he or she would run it. It also is a training mechanism. I disagree with the first whereas on this, about the fact is that we had it in the past and it may come back again, and I don't think it would come back again, that we have somebody from the north and then somebody from the south and somebody from the middle and stuff like that. So the first whereas, I might even, maybe somebody else will strike that first whereas, but I think it's a good training. I think it's a good upcoming training for that. People learning, how to get up to the top. And I am not running for chairman, I'm not running for vice chairman, and I'm not running for second vice chairman. So this has nothing to do with me. So I would hope people would vote yes on this.
Supervisor Zerflu.
I don't have any problem with the first whereas, but the second whereas,
I'm sorry.
where it's basically, if you read that, it's alluding to the fact that the second vice chair is going to have 4 years of training. 4 years of training makes me think, well, geez, then he's going to become the chairman. And we're forgetting about a little thing every 2 years where we elect a chair, a vice chair, in this case, a second vice chair. I agree with it. I think second vice chair would be a good thing, but I can't vote for it unless that verbiage is changed. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Supervisor Clemens.
Mr. Clendenning and I are going to agree on something today.
You will stand up.
He was going to pick up the microphone, but on this one, I will move to amend by striking that second whereas.
Second.
Is there a
Taxing my nerves today.
That's what you get the big bucket for.
I don't even know why I show up. You two guys take care of it.
Striking the second whereas.
I'm striking the second whereas. Give me a second.
Yep.
You guys gonna vote unanimously on this? Yeah. Very good. I didn't know how to put it in the system, either a voice vote or a roll call vote. Because you played with my
That's voice vote. Want to do it?
Well, I'm going to, because that's the way I'm putting it in. So we're removing,
You want a motion on that?
We have a motion.
I do.
On the voice vote.
So I'm removing the second whereas.
Yep. That's correct, right? Supervisor Plum?
Was there a second?
Yeah. Who was the second? Who was the second on that?
Okay.
Okay, we are voting, you want to do this as a voice vote?
Yeah, sure.
Without objection, we'll do this as a voice vote, and we are voting on the amendment. The amendment states we are going to strike the second whereas from that resolution. Everyone understand the amendment? Okay. All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Okay, thank you. We have an amended resolution now, striking the second whereas. We go back to the original resolution. Supervisor Plemmel.
And with that being struck, I will support this. I said, second vice chair, you go all the way to 15th vice chair if you want. I don't think it hurts anything. And I think it does provide some latitude if the chair wants to give up the gavel in order to speak.
Keep an eye on the chair.
We are back to the amended resolution now. We have a motion on the floor and seconded. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, please vote. And that motion passes. Thank you. Moves us on to page 218 in our 10th resolution, and I would ask the clerk to read that as well.
Reposition myself. This will be Resolution 20-2-10, to realign the committee structure to better serve the county's interests. Fiscal note, minimal increase in per diems.
We have a motion on the floor and seconded regarding that resolution. Is there any discussion on that resolution? Any discussion? Supervisor Plemmel.
Getting my exercise, like I said today. You see the org chart that follows the resolution on the following page. When I read the minutes here, I was a little bit bothered by the narrative, which stated that there were some departments who felt that they didn't have adequate time in oversight. And I'm not sure if that was the opinion of any board members or any of the other committee chairs. But in speaking to most of those department heads who would be affected by this, without exception, they said, we have no objection to the way it's currently handled. We don't in any way feel slighted, and we've always had time. Now, at this current time, the only major committee I sit on is the HERC committee, and that was referred to directly, and I think it was said that oftentimes Parks doesn't have adequate discussion. I would argue that under the direction of our chairman, we have more than adequate conversation or discussion. I think sometimes the discussion probably weights more heavily to the Parks end of it just because there's more business on the agenda. And I don't think we've ever had a meeting that's lasted more than 2 hours. So we certainly have the time and the ability to move in that effect. I guess if I was going to do something like this, I would pull those department heads together and I'd ask them, I'd say, do you have a problem with oversight? If they said, yeah, then I'd look at it. Then I'd probably pull a meeting of my committee chairs together and say, do any of you have a problem with the departments you have oversight of? And see if there's a problem. So at this point in time, I'm always in favor of better alignment, and I'll always look at it, but I don't think the answer to this is to create additional committees. So at this time, again, I'm going to move to indefinitely postpone this resolution.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion to indefinitely postpone the resolution and seconded on the floor. Is there any discussion on that? Supervisor Clinton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, what are we here for? We've had a good meeting, and Lance just canceled his dinner with me. But the fact is, why not vote on something? If you don't like something, amend it. That's what we've been doing all day. I think this is a terrific county board. Why don't you just do your work instead of kicking the damn can down the road? You have in here, and I'm still speaking to the, yes, I am. You have in here a committee that I think is the Renewable and Sustainable Committee. I think it's a great committee, but what happens after April in that committee? What happens? What jurisdiction are they under? And I think this is a great committee to take these things on. Well, one of the things that I think should be, somebody should make an amendment to put amend the motion to put it back in highway with the parks. I don't think that was a very good move, but I voted for it because I thought it would create discussion. So please don't kick this can down the road. You know, we create a committee of sustainable and renewable that I thought always should be there, and we put a property committee, and we used to have a property committee. And that's what I think is important about this. So let's talk about it, not vote for the amendment.
Supervisor Creed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll rise to talk about a little bit about the discussion we had at G&L about this, and the reasoning. I don't know if I want to take credit for moving parks from the herd committee. I don't think that, I can tell you if that wasn't done because I thought that the highway committee wasn't doing their job, or the committee, that specific department head was not getting their due in the committee. I think you've got to look back at where this probably started, the discussion started about the executive committee. If you remember, there's already been voted that we're not going to call it an executive committee anymore. We're going to call it an operations committee. And there's certainly, as some of the supervisors feel that there's too much power, too many different departments under one roof. So that started the discussion. When I looked at this and this isn't just me, but I voted for increasing the committee, is to take option one, and if you can look, it's in your packet, and what each heading lines up with the departments that they're under. And the operations committee, just to give one, is the county treasurer, finance department, county clerk, human resource department. Those probably all make sense with the word operations. And the rest of the health and human services, what they oversee, probably makes sense of that deal. The highway is probably our second or third largest budget. They probably have enough work just with highway. So that's what brought to mind my deal. The other deal is the property committee. This is, I won't deny myself and Supervisor Clendenning probably have had a running battle about this because he supports the property committee. I didn't because it wasn't clearly defined in my mind. I don't know, I guess you could still argue it isn't. It's clear in my mind now. If there's a property committee and parks are going to be in highway, are probably our largest property, think about this, in the whole county and all the departments. The Parks Department has most of the property under their control or their oversight, plus the Forestry Department. So if you're not going to put that under property, where would you put it? You know, we can argue about what's the proper way, if there should be another committee. I'm going to add one thing to this comment. A lot of things that go on at this floor kind of takes, in my mind, a vacuum. The committee brings something up, but where was this alignment requested from this board? Now, I understand, I'm going to have people stand up and say, well, any supervisor can bring up anything he wants, bring up any resolution, and that's absolutely true, and I recognize that. But if we're going to realign our committees, shouldn't that come from the board down, not the other way up? It's just something to think about. Thank you.
Any other Supervisor Lightner?
Okay, I'll make this short and sweet. There's been some impassioned speeches today, but this was so important to judicial and legislative that we called a special meeting to discuss. At that time, it was 3 options. It became 4 options last week. I would ask you all to bring this to a vote today, that this is a significant change that's important. We don't want to postpone. Thank you.
Supervisor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to make one comment, and it's in regards to something that I heard Supervisor Curry say about moving parks and highway has such I don't know the exact wording, but essentially they have a lot on their plate. And I appreciate that remark, but I want to go back to something Supervisor Plimmel said, and that is these meetings that HERC has struggle sometimes to last an hour and a half. Our last meeting, and the committee can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't even know if we lasted 45 minutes. We have 2 departments, Highway and Parks, and yes, Highway is a very important department. It has a lot of the infrastructure, it's a big budget, but by no means do I see the logic in moving Parks. I really don't. This is one of those times where I think this committee probably could take on more, and I know that would probably be argued as well, but we could probably take on more. I don't know if removing Parks makes any sense. Now, I'm going to be honest, I'm still on the fence. I don't know if tabling this indefinitely is the best course of action. I think it's good from time to time to always examine the organizational chart, but I feel strongly that Parks should not be moved. Thank you.
Supervisor Zerfeld.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try and get right to the point so Lance doesn't grab the mic from me or something. I was opposed to this at the beginning because I had a concern about the communications department, but I will now be voting against this amendment because the communication department, as I understand, will be standing on their own. So I will be voting no against the amendment, and I agree with Supervisor Clendening. We should take this in for a vote on the resolution today.
Supervisor Clendening.
I'm just talking on this because of something that was said. Why did the Judicial and Legislative Committee do that? The Judicial and Legislative Committee, after the organization from 38 supervisors down to 19, and from 22 committees down to 5 or 6, the Judicial and Legislative Committee has captured rules, and judicial and legislative, we was never legislative. The new one just was claims and never legislative. So that's why it was the Judicial and Legislative Committee, and it was there almost 2 years. Just keep putting it off, till finally I give them 3 choices, and they voted on those choices. So I'm still voting no against tabling this indefinitely.
Supervisor Clendening.
All right, let's go back to parliamentary procedure. This was postponed indefinitely. That's the motion. And that doesn't mean this can't eventually come back in some other form. My concern is this, and first of all, I heard a comment that the J&L committee had a special meeting. They have more special meetings than every other committee in this county put together. So there's a lot of special meetings there. And to Supervisor Clendening's point, I don't disagree that this bears discussion and that should occur. But unless we're going to recess this board and go out in the hall and for the next 4, 5, 6 hours, shuffle paper around and decide how this should play out, I don't think it's something we can just do, and that is just add another committee. I've never said that the structure is perfect. But when we did this the first time, we did it with a lot of consideration to try to get it right. And I think that that discussion needs to continue. I don't see having a standalone highway committee. I don't see lumping information technology in with the public property. There's just a whole bunch of this that doesn't make a lot of sense at this point. So this was the most expeditious way to do it after the first go-around we had on the compensation before. There's no reason that this can't be, in fact, reconsidered, brought back in another form with that discussion having been had with the departments, with the committee chairmen themselves, all of them, and then we move forward. So again, I am going to support the indefinite postponement to just kill this in its current form. Thank you.
Any other, I'm afraid to ask. Any other discussion on the motion? The motion is to postpone indefinitely. Seeing no further discussion, please vote. And that motion passes 11 to 8. Thank you. We move on. Pages 219 to 220 are the details of that proposed restructuring. HERC committee meeting minutes, 221 through 224. Highway Commission on 225 through 229. Timber sales on page 230. Parks and Forestry, 231 through 233. And that brings us to our 11th resolution on page 234. I would ask the clerk to read that, please.
This will be Resolution 20-2-11. To become eligible for maintenance monies on the existing Wood County ATV Intensive Use Area Trail and the Kimball and Hazelnut Connector Trail. Fiscal note, no cost to Wood County, total reimbursement from State Aid Registration Fund, and for the ATV Intensive Use Area, donated services by the Central Wisconsin ATV Riders Club.
We have a motion on the floor and seconded regarding the resolution. Is there any discussion on that motion? Any discussion?
I have a question.
Vice Chair Roser.
I just want to ask a question of the people that are involved in these ATV trails, which I think are a great thing. But I see opportunities for businesses to open up to rent people ATVs. I went to price an ATV, it costs more than my car that I currently drive. And I was wondering if there are any businesses out there as we're working on these ATVs and, you know, fixing them up so we get economic development. Are there any businesses out there that you think are going to spring up renting ATVs to people that don't want to purchase an ATV for more than my car cost?
I can answer that, I think. I think Power Pack was looking into it. I think liability is a big deal and very costly for some of those people that do that. I talked to them when we were doing the ATV trail opening, so I know they're looking into it. I think it's a matter of how they can make it work fiscally. Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, please vote.
Oh, I'm not connected. I lost my connection. I'll try again. Oh, it works now.
And that passes unanimously, thank you. That takes us to our 12th and final resolution on page 235. I would ask the clerk to read that as well.
This will be Resolution 20-2-12, to become eligible for snowmobile trail maintenance monies on the existing trails on county and private lands for the 2020-2021 snowmobile season. Fiscal note, no cost to Wood County, total reimbursement from the state snowmobile aid.
We have a motion on the floor and seconded regarding the resolution. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, please vote. And that motion passes unanimously as well. Thank you. That takes us to page 236, and on page 236 and 37, we have Central Wisconsin State Fair Board minutes. 238 and 239, we have the Marshfield Fairgrounds Commission. South Central Library System Board of Trustees on pages 240 through 242. And the Wood County, Wisconsin, the Wood County Strategic Plan, I believe I can characterize that as an initial draft, on pages 243 and 250. And was there something after the meeting today that you want to speak to?
I'll be glad to extend another invitation. I sent out an email to all the county board supervisors, and I think Nancy sent one out to the department heads, that we're going to form into groups to address the various portions of the strategic plan. We'd like for you to stay and participate in that discussion. This that you see in front of you is in draft form, so we're looking for input, as we have provided numerous times for you to have input into this. But now that we have a draft document put together, we'd like some additional input into the appropriateness of the verbiage that's on those pages. So we'll do that after a short break after this county board meeting, and I don't anticipate that lasting maybe 45 minutes. Nancy, is that kind of what your thought is, that we might do that? Yeah, so we'll try not to keep you too long, but we would very much like to have your input. If you're unable to stay after county board meeting and you have an opportunity to shoot Nancy or myself an email about your comments on the document, we would invite you to do that if you're unable to stay after county board. Thank you very much.
So did you have a commencement time for that you wanted to start it after adjourn?
Yeah, I think 10 minutes, giving everybody a chance to move around for 10 minutes and take care of some business and have another cup of coffee. So it's what, it's 10, why don't we say 10 after 11?
And here in this room?
Here in this room, yes.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of the packet for today. Is there anything else that needs to come before this board this morning? Anything else? Seeing nothing, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. We have one from Al. Is there a second? All in favor of adjournment indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Thank you. Have a good day. Be safe.